The ping of a text message illuminated Sarah Mitchell's phone at 2:17 a.m. Her trembling fingers hovered over the screen, hesitating before opening the message from her best friend, Vanessa Cooper. It's done. Two simple words that confirmed an irreversible act. Sarah's husband of 12 years, Michael Mitchell, winner of the $37 million Powerball jackpot just 3 weeks earlier, was dead. The lottery murder that would soon captivate the nation had been executed according to plan. But as Sarah would discover, even the most meticulously crafted schemes have their flaws. The story of Michael and Sarah Mitchell represents one of the most chilling examples of how sudden wealth can trigger deadly consequences. Like Abraham Shakespeare, Jeffrey Dampier, and other lottery winners killed by those closest to them, Michael's windfall would prove to be not a blessing, but a death sentence. This is the true story of how the promise of millions led to murder, and how justice eventually prevailed despite elaborate efforts to conceal the truth. Michael Mitchell wiped sweat from his brow as he finished his shift at Grayson Manufacturing, where he'd worked as a floor supervisor for the past 15 years. At 47, his once athletic frame had softened, his dark hair now peppered with grey at the temples. The factory job paid enough to keep their modest 3-bedroom home in the suburbs of Columbus, Ohio, but not much more. Like many Americans, the Mitchells lived paycheck to paycheck, their dreams of financial security seeming increasingly distant. Sarah Mitchell, 43, had once harbored ambitions of opening her own interior design business. Those dreams had gradually faded as the realities of their financial situations set in. Instead, she worked part-time at a local department store, arranging displays and occasionally helping customers with home decor selections. Her talent was evident, but opportunities were limited in their middle-class neighborhood. You know what would solve everything? Michael would say almost weekly, usually while checking their dwindling bank account. Just one lucky break, one lottery win. Sarah would typically roll her eyes at this. You have better chances of being struck by lightning twice. Their marriage had begun with genuine love and shared dreams, but 15 years of financial stress had taken its toll. Arguments about money became more frequent. Intimacy dwindled. They maintained appearances for friends and family, but behind closed doors, resentment festered. Vanessa Cooper had been Sarah's confidant since college. At 42, Vanessa projected an image of success as a real estate agent, driving a leased BMW and wearing designer clothes. But those who knew her well understood this was largely a facade. Her real estate business barely kept her afloat, and her lavish lifestyle was funded primarily by credit cards carrying balances she could barely manage. Divorced twice, Vanessa had become increasingly bitter about her romantic prospects and financial situation. She viewed the world through a transactional lens. Relationships were valuable only if they provided some benefit. Her friendship with Sarah was perhaps her most genuine connection, though even this relationship wasn't immune to Vanessa's manipulative tendencies. "You deserve so much better than this life," Vanessa would tell Sarah during their weekly wine nights, gesturing dismissively at Sarah's modest living room. "Michael's never going to provide the life you want." These conversations planted seeds that would later bloom into something deadly. James Harmon had been Michael's best friend since high school. At 48, James worked as a construction foreman, his weathered face and calloused hands testament to decades of physical labor. Unlike Michael, James had never married, preferring the simplicity of bachelorhood and the freedom to pursue his passion for fishing and camping. James was the kind of friend who showed up without being asked when Michael needed help with home repairs or when Sarah's car broke down. He joined Michael for beers every Thursday night at O'Malley's pub, where they would watch whatever game was on and talk about everything and nothing. "You got a good woman there," James would remind Michael whenever his friend complained about marital tensions. "Don't forget what matters." James saw the cracks in the Mitchells' marriage, but believed they would weather the storm. He couldn't have imagined how drastically their lives would change, or how his loyalty would be tested in the aftermath of tragedy. On a crisp Saturday morning in October 2019, Michael stopped at the corner mart on his way to help James with a deck project. It was his routine to buy a coffee and a lottery ticket. a small indulgence that Sarah had long ago stopped criticizing as a waste of money. "Give me the usual, Pete," Michael said to the store owner, sliding $5 across the counter. "One day, Mike," Pete said with a wink as he printed the Powerball ticket. "One day, you'll be buying me coffee instead." Michael tucked the ticket into his wallet without checking the numbers. It wasn't until Sunday evening, while watching the news, that his life changed forever. And the winning Powerball numbers for the $37 million jackpot are 7, 13, 22, 35, 48, and Powerball 26. Michael's hands trembled as he pulled the crumpled ticket from his wallet. He checked the numbers once, twice, 3 times before letting out a whoop that startled Sarah from her magazine. "What's wrong?" she asked, alarmed. "Nothing's wrong," Michael said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Everything's right. Sarah, we won. We won the Powerball." Sarah's initial disbelief quickly gave way to euphoria. They stayed up until dawn, planning all the ways their lives would change. For the first time in years, they felt united, embracing on their couch as they dreamed of debt-free living, travel, and security. "I told you," Michael kept saying. "I always told you one day we'd get our break." The lottery murder that would later shock the community had its roots in what psychologists call sudden wealth syndrome, the complex psychological and social challenges that accompany an abrupt financial windfall. For the Mitchells, the transformation was immediate and overwhelming. After confirming their win with lottery officials, Michael and Sarah faced their first major decision, whether to take the lump sum or annuity payments. After consulting with a financial advisor recommended by the Lottery Commission, they opted for the lump sum of approximately $22.3 million. After taxes, they would receive about $15.8 million, still a life-changing amount. "We need to be smart about this," Michael insisted during their meeting with the advisor. "This isn't just about buying stuff. This is about security for the rest of our lives." Sarah nodded in agreement, but her mind was already racing with possibilities that had nothing to do with long-term financial planning. The Lottery Commission required them to participate in a press conference, standard procedure for major winners. Despite advice to maintain privacy as much as possible, their names, hometown, and the amount of their winnings became public knowledge. Their photo, showing them holding the oversized check with beaming smiles, appeared in newspapers and on websites across the region. Within days, the changes began. Distant relatives called with congratulations that thinly veiled requests for financial assistance. Neighbors became overly friendly. Strangers sent letters with heart-wrenching stories and pleas for help. The Mitchells' phone rang constantly until they changed their number. "This is insane," Sarah said one evening, a week after their win. "I feel like we're under siege." Michael remained optimistic. "It'll die down. We just need to lay low for a while, make some smart investments, and then we can start enjoying this properly." But the pressure was already creating new fissures in their relationship. Michael wanted to be cautious. Sarah wanted to celebrate. Michael talked about investment portfolios. Sarah browsed real estate listings for mansions. The unity they'd felt on that first night was rapidly deteriorating. The lottery winner, murdered 3 weeks after his windfall, had shown several concerning signs that friends later recalled with painful clarity. The most significant warning came during Sarah's first conversation with Vanessa after the win. "Oh my God, I still can't believe it," Vanessa squealed over the phone. "You're set for life. When are you moving out of that place?" "Michael wants to take it slow," Sarah replied, unable to keep the disappointment from her voice. "He's talking to financial advisors about wealth management and responsible investing." There was a pause before Vanessa responded. "That's your money too, Sarah. Don't let him control all of it." "I know, but—" "No buts. You've put up with his boring middle-class mentality for 15 years. This is your chance to finally live the life you deserve." That conversation planted a seed that would grow into something sinister. When Sarah and Vanessa met for lunch the following day at an upscale restaurant Sarah could now easily afford, the discussion continued. "Has he talked about how you'll split the money?" Vanessa asked, sipping champagne that Sarah had ordered despite the early hour. "Split it. We're married. It's our money." "Honey, you need to protect yourself. What if he decides he wants something different?" Men with money suddenly have a lot more options. Sarah hadn't considered this possibility. Michael wouldn't do that. Maybe not the old Michael, but new money changes people. Trust me, I've seen it in my business. You need to make sure you get what's yours. By the time lunch ended, Sarah's perception had shifted. What had been our win in her mind was now mentally categorized as my share and his share. She began watching Michael more closely, interpreting his caution as control, his excitement as selfishness. Meanwhile, Michael was experiencing his own challenges. Old friends treated him differently. Co-workers expected him to quit immediately and expressed resentment when he said he'd stay on until they found a replacement. Only James seemed unchanged, still treating Michael as he always had. "Don't let it go to your head," James advised during their Thursday night beers, now at a slightly nicer establishment than O'Malley's. "Money's just a tool. It doesn't change who you are unless you let it." Michael nodded, grateful for the grounding presence of his friend. Sarah's acting different, talking about buying a mansion in Bexley, wanting to join country clubs. "That's not us." "Give her time," James said. "This is a big adjustment for both of you." What neither man could have known was that Sarah had already begun contemplating a future that wouldn't include Michael at all. 3 days after the Mitchells received their lottery winnings, the first major purchase was made. A sleek black Mercedes-Benz GLE coupe that Sarah had insisted on buying. Michael had argued for waiting, for being more practical, but Sarah had been adamant. "We can afford it now," she'd said dismissively. "That's the whole point of winning, isn't it? To not worry about money anymore." The car sat in their driveway, conspicuously out of place in their middle-class neighborhood, a gleaming symbol of their new status. Michael still drove his 10-year-old Ford pickup to work, uncomfortable with the attention the luxury vehicle attracted. Inside their home, tension grew. Michael had agreed to quit his job at the end of the month, giving his employer time to find a replacement. Sarah had already given notice at the department store, effective immediately. She spent her days shopping, meeting Vanessa for lunch, and researching luxury homes online. "I found the perfect house," Sarah announced one evening as Michael returned from work. She turned her laptop to show him a sprawling mansion listed at $3.2 million. "It's in Bexley. 6 bedrooms, pool, home theater, everything we've ever wanted." Michael frowned. "Sarah, we talked about this. We need to be smart. Let's pay off our debts, set up some investments, and then think about moving. Maybe something more modest?" "Modest? We have almost $16 million, which needs to last us the rest of our lives, plus taxes, maintenance, new expenses we haven't even thought of yet." The argument escalated, ending with Sarah storming out to meet Vanessa, taking the Mercedes, and leaving Michael to eat dinner alone. It was becoming a pattern. What Michael didn't know was that during these meetings, Vanessa was systematically feeding Sarah's discontent, emphasizing how Michael was controlling her money and limiting her freedom. "You know what the problem is," Vanessa said during one such dinner, leaning forward conspiratorially. "He's afraid if you have access to all that money, you won't need him anymore. And he's right." Sarah stirred her cocktail thoughtfully. "I've given him 15 years of my life. And what has he given you? A mediocre existence in a forgettable house. Now he wants to keep controlling you, even when you're rich." Vanessa reached across the table to squeeze Sarah's hand. "You deserve better." By the 3rd week after their win, Sarah and Michael were barely speaking. They slept in separate bedrooms, with Sarah citing Michael's early work schedule as disrupting her sleep. In reality, she was staying up late texting with Vanessa, their conversations growing increasingly dark. The lottery murder plot began as a seemingly hypothetical conversation. Sarah and Vanessa were at Vanessa's apartment, drinking expensive wine that Sarah had brought, when Vanessa posed a question that would change everything. What would happen to the money if something happened to Michael? Sarah looked up, startled. "What do you mean?" "I'm just saying, hypothetically. If he died or something, would you get everything?" The question hung in the air for a moment before Sarah responded. "I guess so. We don't have a will yet. The financial advisor mentioned it, but we haven't gotten around to it. So legally, it would all be yours." Sarah nodded slowly, the implication of Vanessa's words sinking in. "But that's crazy. We're talking about Michael dying." Vanessa shrugged, refilling their glasses. People die all the time. Accidents happen. That night, what began as a disturbing hypothetical gradually transformed into a tentative plan. Vanessa, who had dated a pharmaceutical sales rep years earlier, claimed to know how to obtain prescription medications that, in the right combination, would be lethal but difficult to detect. It would look like a heart attack, she explained with disturbing calmness. Especially for someone his age. No one would question it. Sarah should have been horrified. She should have shut down the conversation immediately. Instead, she found herself asking questions, considering possibilities, mentally calculating what life would be like with both Michael gone and the entire lottery fortune at her disposal. Over the next few days, the plan evolved from hypothetical to concrete. Vanessa obtained the medications through contacts she refused to name. Sarah began researching heart attacks, learning about symptoms and typical scenarios to make Michael's death appear natural. The lottery winner murdered had no idea his life was being measured in days rather than years. He continued going to work, meeting with financial advisors, and hoping the rift with Sarah would heal once the initial shock of their windfall subsided. "I think we should see a marriage counselor," he suggested one evening, finding Sarah in the kitchen. "This money should be bringing us closer, not pushing us apart." Sarah had smiled, agreeing more readily than Michael expected. "You're right. Let's talk about it this weekend. I'm sorry I've been difficult." Michael had been relieved, interpreting her response as a positive sign. In reality, Sarah had already decided he wouldn't live to see the weekend. On Thursday, October 24th, 2019, Michael texted James that he wouldn't make their usual beer night. "Sarah wants to have a special dinner. I think we're finally getting back on track." James responded with a thumbs-up emoji and, "About time. Have fun, buddy." That evening, Sarah prepared Michael's favorite meal: steak, garlic mashed potatoes, and roasted vegetables. She wore a dress he had complimented in the past, styled her hair, and set the dining room table with their best dishes and candles. "What's the occasion?" Michael asked when he arrived home, pleasantly surprised by the effort. "I've been thinking about what you said," Sarah replied, kissing his cheek. "You're right. We need to work on us. This is a fresh start." Michael relaxed for the first time in weeks, believing they had turned a corner. They ate dinner, talking about potential vacation destinations and reminiscing about happier times in their marriage. Sarah made sure Michael's wine glass stayed full. "I have dessert," she announced after dinner. "Your favorite cheesecake from Antonio's." While Michael moved to the living room, Sarah prepared 2 plates of cheesecake in the kitchen. Into Michael's portion, she crushed the pills Vanessa had provided, mixing them thoroughly into the graham cracker crust at the bottom where they wouldn't be visible. "Here you go," she said, handing him the plate with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Michael ate the cheesecake, commenting on how good it was. They watched a movie, and Sarah made sure he had another glass of wine, knowing alcohol would enhance the effect of the drugs. Halfway through the film, Michael began to look uncomfortable. He loosened his collar, complaining about feeling hot. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked, feigning concern. "Just not feeling great suddenly," Michael said, his words slightly slurred. "Might be the wine. I should probably go to bed." Sarah helped him upstairs, noting how he leaned heavily on her, his coordination already affected. By the time they reached the bedroom, Michael was having difficulty breathing. I need to go to the hospital," he gasped, clutching his chest. "Let me get your shoes," Sarah said, leaving him sitting on the edge of the bed. She went downstairs, but instead of returning with shoes, she texted Vanessa. "It's happening. Come now." Upstairs, Michael collapsed on the bed, his breathing labored, his face contorted in pain. Sarah watched from the doorway, not offering assistance, not calling 911. Within 20 minutes, Michael Mitchell was dead, another lottery winner killed by the person who should have been celebrating with him. The doorbell rang at 11:42 p.m. Sarah, who had been sitting in the living room staring blankly at the wall, jumped at the sound. She opened the door to find Vanessa, dressed entirely in black, carrying a large duffel bag. "Is it done?" Vanessa asked without preamble. Sarah nodded, her face pale. "He's upstairs." The reality of what she had done was beginning to sink in. This wasn't a hypothetical scenario anymore. Her husband of 15 years lay dead in their bedroom, and she was responsible. Vanessa seemed eerily calm as she pulled latex gloves from her bag and handed a pair to Sarah. "Put these on. Don't touch anything without them. We need to clean up and make this look right." The next few hours were a blur of methodical activity. They removed the wine glasses and plates, washing them thoroughly. They collected the remaining cheesecake and packaging, which Vanessa would later dispose of miles away. They wiped down surfaces, removed any trace of the pills, and staged the bedroom to look as though Michael had gone to bed normally and died in his sleep. "Now we need to think about the story," Vanessa said as they sat at the kitchen table around 2 a.m. "You went to bed together. You woke up this morning and found him cold. You tried to wake him, panicked, called 911. You're devastated, in shock." Sarah nodded mechanically, rehearsing the narrative in her mind. The lottery murder had been executed, but now came the equally challenging task of avoiding detection. "What about an autopsy?" Sarah suddenly asked, panic rising in her voice. "Won't they do an autopsy?" "Not necessarily," Vanessa replied. "He's 47, no obvious signs of trauma. If the doctor believes it was a heart attack, they might not order one, especially if you object on religious or personal grounds. And if they do, the drugs I gave you are difficult to detect unless they're specifically looking for them. By the time they might consider that, the substances will have broken down in his system." Sarah wasn't entirely convinced, but she had passed the point of no return. At 2:17 a.m., Vanessa sent the text, "It's done," as a confirmation that their plan had been executed and the cleanup completed. "Get some sleep," Vanessa advised before leaving. "Tomorrow, you need to look like a grieving widow, not an exhausted accomplice." At 7:23 a.m. on Friday, October 25th, Sarah Mitchell called 911, her voice breaking with what the dispatcher would later describe as convincing distress. "My husband," she sobbed into the phone. I think he's dead. Please help me. Please send someone." The paramedics arrived within minutes, but as expected, they could only confirm what Sarah already knew. Michael Mitchell was pronounced dead at the scene, the preliminary cause listed as suspected cardiac arrest. The performance Sarah gave that morning impressed even Vanessa, who arrived 30 minutes after the paramedics, playing the role of the supportive best friend perfectly. Sarah alternated between hysterical crying and shocked silence. Detective Lisa Martinez had seen plenty of widows, real ones. Raw grief didn't look like a Hallmark movie. It looked messy. Red-rimmed eyes, sudden outbursts of anger, numb confusion. But Sarah Mitchell? Her tears looked almost practiced. Something about her timing was off too. According to the report, Michael had been dead for several hours before Sarah made the 911 call. She claimed she'd fallen asleep in the guest room and discovered him in the morning. That wasn't unusual by itself. Grieving couples sometimes slept apart, but the precision of Sarah's story rang rehearsed. The coroner noted an absence of natural causes for the sudden cardiac arrest. Toxicology was ordered, routine in any unexpected death without a known history of heart problems. But Sarah didn't know that. 2 days after the funeral, James Harmon walked into the Columbus Police Department, visibly distraught. "I don't want to stir things up," he began, "but something's not right." He told them about Michael's optimism the night of the dinner, about the sudden cancellation of their weekly hangout, about Sarah's erratic behavior before and after the lottery win. "She stopped being Sarah," he said. "She was colder. And Vanessa? Always around now, like a shadow." That gave Martinez enough reason to push for expedited lab results. The toxicology report came back 4 days later. Traces of amobarbital and diazepam, both sedatives, found in Michael's system at levels inconsistent with prescription use. Lethal levels, in fact. And neither drug had been prescribed to him. When Martinez returned to interview Sarah, her responses were short, clipped. The grief was still there, but now it felt like a mask slipping. Vanessa, when brought in for questioning, displayed a different kind of control. Smiling too much, laughing at the wrong moments. She claimed no involvement. "I'm just her best friend," she repeated. But investigators found inconsistencies in her statements, especially when compared to security footage showing her car near the Mitchell house on the night Michael died. Martinez obtained a warrant for Sarah's phone. The deleted texts between her and Vanessa told the rest of the story. It's happening. Come now. It'll be over soon. I'm shaking. What if they know? Digital footprints sealed their fate. The trial of Sarah Mitchell and Vanessa Cooper began in June 2020. It was one of the most watched cases in Ohio history. Prosecutor Catherine Chen presented a rock-solid case built on forensic evidence, phone records, financial documents, and testimony from James Harmon and Pete, the store owner. Sarah's defense tried to paint her as manipulated by Vanessa, but the jury wasn't convinced. Both women were found guilty of first-degree murder, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. Life sentences, no parole. James attended every day of the trial, and on the final day, he delivered a victim impact statement that silenced the courtroom. You didn't just steal his life, you stole who he could have become, and no amount of money is worth that. In the years since Michael's murder, his story became a cautionary tale, a reminder that sudden wealth can reveal more than it changes. It can peel back the layers to expose what was already there. Vanessa's real estate license was revoked. Sarah's assets were seized in civil court by Michael's estate. The home they'd purchased post-win was auctioned off to pay legal fees. James created a foundation in Michael's name, helping support financial education for blue-collar workers who receive large settlements or inheritances. And on October 24th each year, he leaves a single lottery ticket on Michael's grave, just in case.